Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. I'm Stu Hardy, joined as always by Derek Brissett. Derek, it's been some big games being held this past weekend. You know, crowds of over 10,000 on two occasions. One, of course, being the MLR Championship Final held in Chicago, and the other being the second round, or third round over. It's complicated, but second round of games for the Pacific 4 series held in Ottawa. And, you know, because of the timing of things, obviously, it's a double header going on in Ottawa, which meant that the USA versus Australia game was held at the same time as the championship final. So because they're not Canadian, we ignored that one. And we're focusing on the other games. But yeah, like I said, both games had attendances over 10,000, which is huge for North American rugby.
Yeah, I think ultimately, like, at the end of the day, like, no matter what teams you cheer for out of these games, or even if you're just a neutral, like, I guess for the MLR game, I'm sure a lot of people are just neutrals for that, watching it because it's the MLR Championship. But like for the Pacific 4 series, the MLR Championship, like, no matter who you cheer for, I think, like, it's a really big win for North American rugby this weekend. Obviously, the Pacific 4 series was on TSN, TSN proper too, Saturday night at 7, which is obviously a super culturally significant time slot for Canadians. Saturday night at 7 is obviously, it's reserved for like the marquee sporting events every week, right? Obviously in the winter it's hockey night in Canada's time slot, but it kind of translates to the summer too. It's like that was cool because it's like, I mean, a lot of people obviously watched it. There was a couple CFL games happening at the same time, and TSN, like, who obviously the CFL is a really big deal for TSN. TSN still gave women's rugby like the airtime that it deserves by devoting one of their 5 channels to showing that live. And then I think the other 4 all had CFL on it, but that they did the one, which is great. Great to see. And then obviously the MLR Championship too. Probably the absolute best looking broadcast I think the league has had, just from a pure like visual standpoint. Looking at the broadcast on the game, I know it sounds like they did a like almost 3-hour like pregame show, which is really cool. I missed it because I had an Aussie Rules game at 12, so I kind of played in that and then had to rush home to make sure I got home on time for the 3:00 kickoff. But I love that they did that. And all the other the broadcast itself looked great. The obviously, since there's no other MLR games, the bigger than normal broadcast team kind of, I think, added to it. Everybody brought some, helpful and thoughtful insight to the game. I thought Ben Holden and Mike Petrie and Brianna Kim in the booth did a really good job of, recognizing that this is probably the first rugby game that a lot of people are going to watch because it is the final and it's on Fox, and explaining rules, but also not doing it in a way that annoys diehard fans that have done that, fully understand the rules and stuff. Like, they picked their spots to explain what like the rule is and did it in a way that makes it sound like they're just talking about like strategy and things naturally in the flow of the game. So I thought they did a really good job of that, and hopefully any new fans that did watch in pick something up and learn something from them listening to the game. But yeah, the whole thing from like that broadcast standpoint and stuff, everything was great. The event in Chicago seemed amazing too. The event in Ottawa seemed incredible as well. I think at the end of the day, like you said, starting off this podcast, no matter who you cheer for, it's pretty awesome that 20,000 people watched live rugby in North America this past weekend. And obviously a lot more watched those 3+ games. I think there was a couple of curtain raisers and stuff in Ottawa too. So they watched those 3+ games on TV or streamed them or however anybody watched them. So that's it's a pretty all things considered, pretty great day for North American rugby on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's get into these events themselves. And I think calling them events is probably more accurate than just calling them
Well, I think
games.
that's how Chicago marketed this too, though, which I think is a great thing for them and a big um a big plus. Do you want to talk about like a bit of like the actual event and stuff first? What'd you think of the
Yeah,
neutral venue thing? Like, because obviously this was a topic of conversation earlier or
yeah.
whatever. Like, what
So
did you think of just before we actually get into the game, like the whole
yeah. So okay, let's talk about it because this was when you go back to neutral venues hosting the final, you go back to the first year of MLR in 2018, where it was it held in San Diego, and I think it was predetermined that San Diego were hosting again in 2019 as well. The fact that
yeah.
the Legion made the final was just a wonderful coincidence. But you look back at the first final between Glendale and Seattle, and there's only a handful of fans there, really. It's not even like the San Diego faithful. It's just a ragtag bunch of, some people that could come out, but, really not a lot of people. And I think that was a big concern for a lot of fans, especially as well when you look over like the past couple of seasons where the finals been hosted by the home team and there's that, soft guarantee that you can have, a great turnout, as was proven by LA and
was not proven.
unfortunately not so much with
Yeah,
New
I was gonna
York.
say it's like you have to cut this sentence off
Yeah,
here soon.
yeah. But is that like there's that idea in theory and stuff like that, and I think it was last year being a case of because they didn't play at the Red Bull Arena
I
all
think,
season
yeah,
that people were then a bit confused. The kickoff time was ridiculously early as well, and so it's basically felt that New York were winning in a cauldron to no one. Credit where it's due. MLR came out and said, okay, Chicago's going to be hosting it. And from that announcement, they have never stopped promoting that the
yeah,
finals in
unbelievable
Chicago.
job there. Yeah,
And yeah, so I think the promotional efforts by MLR have greatly helped as well. The having the junior tournament as part of the
very cool. Yeah,
uh, pre-game festivities guarantees a number of people coming in through the gate, especially young fans as well, that can, even if they're not affiliated with either of the teams playing, they can come along, they can see what championship rugby looks like, they can, they say like, okay, I'm going to go with like the black and red team. Well, I'm going with the red, blue, and white team instead, and just
yeah.
mix it up and just have fun, enjoying the game, learning as you're going and stuff like that. So yeah, credit where it's due.
Oh, it's
I think MLR proved a lot of doubters and naysayers wrong with hosting it in Chicago, and if they've already made a decision of where the 2024 final is going to be held, then they just got to keep it up and just keep promoting it and be, especially with like the youth outreach as well in whichever city or area it's being hosted in.
yeah.
And I think you're guaranteed then to have a great turnout.
Yeah, no, I loved it this year. I think, like you said, it's like I think over the first few years of the MLR here, they've obviously have done both. They've done the neutral venue and they've done the highest seeded team that makes the final hosts. LA I think worked out pretty well. New York obviously did not. I think part of New York though was, as you said, the change of stadium. So it was like what day of the week did we actually learn where that game was going to be played? Like
I think it. I
I
think
don't
it was
remember.
like the Tuesday
Yeah, like so like
before being hosted.
Tuesday or something before, right? And it was like, yeah, like I don't even think like New York fans knew where that game was going to be played, which is just like, obviously a bit of an issue which is added to it. I think watching this though, I think the MLR is learning a lot like just as a league, as this league gets older and older, season goes on, and like I think they are learning a lot. And I think one thing that we've seen is like I think the neutral venue final really can work for Major League Rugby. I think if you look at really the only other two leagues in North America that are super comparable structure wise, which would be the NFL and the Super Bowl and the CFL and the Grey Cup, where you both have leagues that teams play once a week, and then you get to the playoffs and it's single knockout playoffs, right? And both of those leagues, the Grey Cup and the Super Bowl, are all neutral venue every year. And every year it's obviously like a huge event. And I think that can also be the kind of like the way you go with Major League Rugby. I think that formula works. I think the idea too of, as you said, like it's tough for neutral fans to buy game tickets when you don't know where the game's going to be.
Yeah.
If you know where the game's going to be months in advance, when did they announce that Chicago was hosting? I don't even remember.
Oh, this was back in like April, May time, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So if you know where the final's going to be months in advance, like you can book tickets to go. I mean, I think that's the beauty of like MLR, like and most of the major sports leagues in North America, they're all in like all the teams are in like world-class cities, right? Like every city's kind of a bit of a destination in their own right. So I'm sure wherever you put it, people would be willing to travel to Toronto or Boston or New York, Chicago, etc. Right. So I think that element works because it's easier for neutral fans to plan, and it's also if you're on the fence of it and you need like your team to make it to the final to push you over, it's still also easier to plan because you know where it is. But I think you have that. I think a big thing, though, like you said, was kind of the event aspect of it. Having Shaq DJ before the game, having Shaq also kind of do like the, bring out the game ball and stuff too. That was cool. The Dropkick Murphys performing after, which is obviously a massive band, right? So, I mean, you're selling tickets, right? I'm willing to bet there was people that were at that game that were just there to watch the Dropkick Murphys after. I really hope that they're super into rugby now, or I hope they really enjoyed that game.
Yeah, I think as well.
I guarantee there's people that did that, which is great, by the way. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, if you think how much concert tickets can cost you, and you say
huge band too.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever, and that's the thing. If you say I'm a fan of Dropkick Murphys, and they haven't been in Chicago for a while, and then you find out they're playing. They're playing as like the post party for this sport that you've never heard of, but the tickets are $40.
Yeah,
so you just get on use public transit to get over there. They seem to be doing a lot of drinking in the stands apparently, but and then afterwards you get a Dropkick Murphys concert. Right. Now, this is the thing. We've been talking about the lead up to the game. Let's talk about the game itself.
Yeah.
So
I want to come back to the Dropkick Murphys after we talk about the game, though.
Well, interesting. We will get to that. We start off. We have the two most successful teams in MLR this season, San Diego and New England. So the game gets started off. It goes really well. And then just when you think...
It goes really well for who? That's a subjective point of view there.
The game just gets started until the first gap, which comes at like the 4th minute mark, where Will Hooley passes to Ma Nonu, and Nonu must have had a miscommunication or something because he doesn't get the ball, and then Jacobson from New England pounces on it, and suddenly we have the first try of the game, and the momentum going one way suddenly spins, and these two teams, both known for scoring tries and scoring lots of them this season. And immediately it's basically who could concede first, who can make a mistake first. And turns out it was San Diego. However, then you move on, it can be very easy, especially when you make a mistake to lose momentum. But, San Diego came right back in it 5 minutes later with Poidovan getting over for the first try for the Legion. And, all of a sudden you've got like an even game. It's 7-all. It's going pretty well. And then, a few errors from San Diego allows Potros to take a kick at the sticks. And suddenly they're getting a couple of penalties. So they're up in this game. But then, San Diego, they're making movements and they get another try this time from Nate Orsberger. And Hooley, again, great with his kicks as well, because he's gotten 2 conversions now. And then just before you close out the half, Hooley with a penalty when the clock's in the red to make it San Diego with like the definite lead going into the sticks. So I think it was 17-10 at this point. So, a lead, but one score can change it all. And speaking of which, 5 minutes into the second half, Paul Balacana, who scored, I think he's the top try scorer for New England this season, goes over to score another, and suddenly it's all even again. We're all doing all right, and just around about the hour mark is then Nate Orsberger going over for his second try of the game. Again, Hooley converting it. So San Diego now on 24 points and New England on 20. So, a penalty isn't going to cut it. You got to, get your guys in position. You got to get ready. You got to get going over. And to be fair, they put a lot of pressure on San Diego for a long time until Nonu, again, of all Nonu's great games, this wasn't one of them. But, with that experience, he knows when opportunities can become available. But unfortunately, it's just ensuring those opportunities stick together. He dashed out online looking for an intercept, was a bit out of step. And instead, it was Leroux Milan getting the ball, finding the gap caused by Nonu's surge and going over to score a try. And then the conversion is missed. So it is a 1-point game. And, Sam Fischel gets it wrong on the restart. The ball is straight back into San Diego's hands. It looks as though we're setting up for a drop goal. And the ball gets passed to Nonu, but it's bounced off the turf and then it gets knocked on. And suddenly it's a scrum. All the Free Jacks have to do is control it and get the ball out. And that's all they need to do. Potras kicking it into touch. The final score, San Diego 24, New England 25. For New England, obviously, this is their first championship win. Impressive since they've done it within the first 3 years. Another expansion side getting it. For San Diego, this is a game of lots of what ifs. What if those passes had found hands? What if Nonu had caught that intercept and had been able to go the distance to score a try? What if the drop goal had connected? And, a lot of memories from 2019 creeping back in. But from a neutral, what an absolute thriller and a total classic that'll be talked about for a long time to come. This was a fantastic game to watch. And even just going back and watching the highlights was, you could tell that history was being made.
Oh, man, this game is incredible. It's probably the best MLR final out of the 5 that have been played so far. And I think, we kind of talked about, obviously probably a lot of people watching this game, watching a rugby game for the first time. If that's your first rugby game, I don't know how you would not be hooked after seeing that. That was crazy. Lots of skill on display, lots of huge hits. Obviously an absolutely thrilling finish, coupled with couple super late lead changes, and obviously Milan gets to be the hero and gets with the try at the end of the game there. I think though we got to hit the biggest talking point of this game though, which is congratulations to Cole Keith, Andrew Quattrin, Spencer Jones, Connor Keys, Ben Lesage, Regan O'Gorman, Foster Dewitt, Isaac Olson, Connor Young, Ethan Fryer, and the Free Jacks captain Josh Larson, as well as the rest of your teammates. 11 Canadians get to add add their name to the list, the growing list of MLR Shield champions. And when it's a great day for Canada, it is therefore a great day for the rest of the world. New England is obviously part of the rest of the world. They seem to be enjoying their day quite a bit. Like it was great. Obviously, not all of 11 of those guys were in the lineup and factored in. But the ones that did, Andrew Quattrin, I thought he was great. Keith was really good coming in off the bench too. Connor Keys has been outstanding like all year. And he seemed to get better and better as the season went on. Lots of impact at the lineup, lots of impact at the breakdown, made a lot of tackles in this game. Right. And so I think that was great. Ben Lesage was obviously also made a huge impact as well. San Diego, I mean, obviously, like Nanu and Brocky really didn't have much going on. And I think that's just credit to Ben Lesage and obviously LaRue Milan as well. And Milan obviously comes away with the try at the end of the game. But all the Canadians that were in this game played great, made a big impact for New England. And we kind of talked about it a little bit last week, how it's really cool to see an MLR team that is basically built around Canadians and a few international players. Who again, like I don't think their starting lineup featured an American in this game either, which isn't anything like against Americans. I'm not trying to say that, but it is really cool to see Canadians, it's a lot of Canadians in their lineup and a lot of Canadians that factor into the success of the New England Free Jacks. And a lot of these guys are, obviously Keith Quattrin, Jones, Keys, and Lesage were all players that weren't on the Free Jacks last year, right? Yeah. So it's like they went out and they got those guys. Tom Kinley went out and signed those players, and they all came in and made a big impact. Obviously, some guys too, like Connor Young, who didn't feature in the final, but it's like that's another Canadian that he went out and got to, and they made a really big push to acquire Canadians this year. And it's great to see that paid off well for them. I think, again, like it bodes really well for Canadian rugby that teams with a lot of Canadians on it are finding success in MLR. Again, I will reiterate the point that even though we do joke about the fact that, like when we're doing predictions, we'll be like, this team's got more Canadians, so they're going to win. This is 3 out of 5 champions where at the very least, if you include the Arrows, at the very least, the team with the second most Canadians has won the MLR Shield. So the first year in 2019, it would have been Seattle. So that's pre-Arrow. So they had the most, and then Seattle again the next year, and now New England is. So it's been pretty constantly. And even LA, when they won, they had a fair number of Canadians too. Although I'm kind of blanking on if they had the most. But it's
I put it this way: you don't need to have the most Canadians on your side. You just need to have more than your opposition in the championship final.
But yeah, exactly. So I mean, it is great to see, and obviously, I think too, like you can kind of see like the expressions on a lot of these guys too. Lifting the shield, and if you follow any of them on like Instagram, follow any of the Free Jacks on Instagram, there's been a lot of party videos and stuff going up, and it's like I think it's just with what like Rugby Canada and the players that play for Rugby Canada, I feel like I've gone through in the past like 2 or 3 years. It's great to see like a massive group of them just get a huge win.
Yeah,
like, and find like some success, win a championship. I just think that's really great, man. And I hope I hope they're all still partying with it and enjoying every second of this right now. This is not really talking about the game. This is just kind of congratulating everybody. But this was an unreal game, and I mean, shout out to obviously, unfortunately, on the losing side of it, but Michael Smith, I thought played really well. when he came into the game. I think around the 50th minute or so. He was critical in the setup to Augsburger's second try and very nearly had a breakdown steal right before LaRue Milan's try, which would have been obviously that could have, if that goes through, that completely changes the outcome of the game. He was very close to getting it. And then obviously Justice Sears Duder and Jason Higgins also on that team. They all had great seasons. It's same with the rest of the San Diego Legion. It's, they set all the records, most wins in the regular season, longest winning streak. The longest winning streak one hurts when when that streak ends in the most important game of the season. But you can't take anything away from what San Diego did. But at the same time, New England's been so good all year, and man, just what a game. Do you have anything you want to highlight from the game? Like, what did you see? Any big moments that you want to point out?
So yeah, I think the whole thing with I think Nanu and San Diego as a whole, one of the things that was put on, I think, one of the MLR match threads for the conference finals was that San Diego was showing a lack of discipline and making errors, and it's like, oh, they need to clean that up. Otherwise, New England are gonna. Well, they said, oh, New England will take them to the cleaners, which clearly didn't happen. But and you can't blame everything on one player, and it's just that Nonu's mistakes just happened to coincide with points opportunities either against San Diego or for New England. But at the same time, but that's the thing, is that then my counterpoint is that if the game is decided by only 1 point, there are a number of instances in which other players on San Diego could have changed that as well. It's like, I don't blame if you win, you win as a team, you lose as a team. So I think that's like the approach to take it. But it did seem it came down to which team was more clinical, which you can't just say, oh, who's the better defenders, who's the better attackers, because from New England's perspective, they got 3 tries in, but 2 of them came from just picking the right opportunities. So for Jacobson and Milan, for example, you could then counter that and say, well, with San Diego, with what's his name, Augsburger, for his second try, that came from team play from Michael Smith, and then that getting passed out, eventually ending up in Augsburger's hands to go over. Will Hooley getting his third conversion of the game, and then he had to go off with I think it looked like a tight muscle or something like that.
That's such a tough way to end a brilliant career. Have that kick, and then San Diego's winning when he leaves, and then he can't factor into the rest of the game.
I know, but it's also in those kinds of situations you just have to trust your teammates, and injuries are things that are out of players' control. Essentially, of like, sometimes they're just like a freak accident. Sometimes it's father time catching up with you and saying you're not recovering from this as quickly as you would have when you were younger. And I think it is like upsetting, but then again, we also had like Eric Howard being limped off in like the 20th minute of his final game, so
it can be a cruel game sometimes.
Exactly. So as in, if for Will Hooley to like say my last act was to score the conversion which helped push us further ahead, I think that's fair enough on him. And you can always say like, oh, well, if when I was on the field we were winning, and then I came off the field and the end of the game we weren't. But at the same time, as in, I'm just kidding. You just gotta recognize that some things are out of individual control. But like I said, this was an absolute classic. This is a game that you'll be recommending neutrals be watching or getting the highlights of, and just watching it again and again, and it'll be the focal point. And when we get to the 2024 championship final, it's going like, all right, guys, this is what happened last year. You've got to do better than that. So yeah, but ultimately a great game. Congratulations to Canada South. I mean New England. And to be honest, to bring it back to the Dropkick Murphys, it would have been quite awkward if you said, I'm shipping up to Boston, and they just reacted with, no.
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually the funny thing, right? Is that it all kind of felt inevitable when you really think about it. I think I feel like I agree with a lot of what you said there. I feel like I have to defend Nanu a little bit. Obviously the first New England try, like you said, this game kind of came down to who, like, they're the two best teams in the league, and they don't make mistakes very often, but it does kind of feel like this game was just like try to make the other team make a mistake, and that's going to end up being what wins the game. Obviously Jacobson's try 4 minutes in, that's off New England, that's off a San Diego mistake, and they made them pay for it real quick. Hoytevin came back real quick. Augsburger had two really well-worked tries as well. Balakenya had a gorgeous try, great finish. Milan's try, I think San Diego goes all in, I think, to that previous ruck with Mike Smith trying to get the breakdown steal. And I think when you have that, is New England's got a pretty big overlap on that side. And I think Nanu in that moment, I don't really think it's a bad play. I think it's like, you got to make a decision. It's like, do you want to try to go for that intercept or make a tackle? And it's like, if you go for the tackle, that's a quick offload to the guy on the wing. If you go for the intercept, it's if you get it, if you go for the tackle, you either have to 100% make that tackle, or that's just an offload to the guy on the wing and it's a try. And I think if you go for the intercept, you have to 100% make that intercept, or the guy walks in for a try. Right. So I think you're kind of in a bit of a difficult spot. I think he made his split second decision to jump out of the line, and he wasn't that far off from getting it either. But hey, great pass. And that was a really well worked. I think that's one of those things too, where it's one of those plays where I think in sports media and everything, everybody always goes to like, okay, where did somebody screw up? And it's like, everyone's really quick to be like, we screwed this up. That try is incredibly well worked by New England. Everything, every phase, their support, their, like, Mike Smith really does almost get that ball. And I can't remember off the top of my head what New England players were there, but they got there and saved that rock. And I feel bad, I can't remember who it was, but that was a great play from them, because they roll Mike Smith back and keep that.
Yeah, exactly. But that leads back to just, you got to be clinical. You can't give anyone an inch. You can't give them a moment.
But that's what I mean. As you're saying, is you have to be clinical. And like we're saying, like, people I know are looking at it to be like, oh, like Nanu made a mistake on that play. And it's like, I think he read that as like, he's got two options. He picked one option. But it's like, the reason that works is because I think like New England put them in a tough spot with what they did in the buildup, right? They were able to kind of like use their forwards. They used the width a little bit. Poland was getting the ball out really quick. Hotros was distributing well. Every forward had a good run. They were breaking the gain line. They were getting the ball back and placed in a position to allow Poland to get it out quick. All of that worked really well. All of that worked really well for them, and they did a great job creating that try and creating the overlap to give that situation where Nanu had to make that choice and and Poland's pass to Milan was money, right? And then Milan just did the rest. I think it's a great try. For some reason, I think though, in like sports media and sports fans, and when we're online, everybody for some reason always wants to jump on where somebody made a mistake, where it's just like New England San Diego didn't lose this game, right? New England won.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
It's like New England fully deserved this win. And it's a big part because, like you said, it came down to who's the most clinical. And New England on this play, all 15 guys on the field for that, like, however many phases that was, right? They played essentially perfect rugby to open up the San Diego defense. Right? And they fully deserved that try. And it was an incredible try to watch. And great way to end the game too, obviously, with the Legion having another chance and the defense of New England showing up big, and the set piece. Kind of honestly, slight negative thing. This is kind of also why I don't like the 2 reset rule, because New England should just be like, we're going to screw this scrum up the whole time. But either way, that's an aside, but that was great. And then, like you said, the Dropkick Murphys were performing. And I mean, if that is not just, like, we should have seen this coming. Like, this should have been inevitable. What I got the pick last week. You let me pick first who I was going to take in this game, and I said San Diego. And I did not factor in that the iconic Boston band is going to be performing at the post game show. And however, like, I think this is also part of the event. And my God, the MLR needs to go back to doing this next year. We got to go back to neutral venues, playing stuff like this all the time, MLR. The New England Free Jacks jumping on stage with the Dropkick Murphys while they play Shipping Up to Boston, incredible. It's literally the best thing that the MLR has ever done. Like, genuinely, like, has not been like a cooler, like, I mean, we've all seen videos of every team celebrating. Nobody's videos look anywhere near as cool as the New England Free Jacks, like literally being on a stage with 10,000 people on the field while a band from the town that they're from sings a song about bringing something to the town that they're from. Right. And that was incredible. It was cool. All the Dropkick Murphy guys wearing the Rugby Union Now shirt. That's some nice vibes for the players too. So like that whole thing was like, that's insane. Like the way that worked out. And I mean, I'm sure the San Diego Legion would have hopped up on stage with them too. I don't think they have any songs about San Diego, but I'm pretty confident they have neutral songs that you could use for anything. But I'm pretty sure they probably would have hopped up on stage with them too. But that just, like, every video of that just looks awesome. Of like them celebrating with 10,000 fans on the field with them. It is brilliant. And the other thing the MLR does, and I have to applaud, they do the trophy presentation correctly, because the NHL is like the only other league that does it correctly. Give the damn trophy to the players first. That's what it goes. Honestly, the Super Bowl, the World Series, NBA, you guys, they're all dumb. Give the trophy to the players first. Done on just handing it straight to Jacobson. Jacobson puts it up and then passes it around to everybody else. It's how it should be done. I have no complaints, no negative feedback for the entire event of this final. Other than, I guess I picked San Diego when they lost, but that's on me. That's on me, and I don't blame San Diego for that at all.
Well, when it comes to deciding what you want in your act at your next neutral venue in 2024 MLR, can I recommend bands such as Sum 41, Rush, Bare Naked Ladies, just to preempt how the final's going to go. But so that brings a conclusion to the 2023 Major League Rugby
Nickelback.
season.
We could do Nickelback.
I'm sure. I'm sure we could afford Nickelback. Anyway.
Dropkick Murphys can't be cheap either, dude. You know what it would be though, for sure? It would be the Arkells. The Arkells is like the token Canadian band at everything.
Right. Hey, okay, let's move on. So that brings a conclusion to the 2023 MLR season and postseason. Next week, we are doing our end of year awards, as we have done for the past few years. But we also want your opinions and we want your votes as well. So keep an eye on our social media channels and fill out the forms attached. And we will be including the fan response of our end of year awards. Right, we've been talking about a team with a former All Black, so let's change to the current Black Ferns, who came to Ottawa this past week to face Canada in the Pacific Four Series. And, one team are the current defending world champions, having just come off a professional domestic competition, and the other's Canada. So I think we kind of knew how this game was going to go.
You made that sound like Canada's bad.
Canada's not bad, but when you're comparing any team to the I would say number one ranked in the world, but that's England. But, the world champions, they're obviously not going to be right on the same level. And considering when this game happened last year, the final result was New Zealand 28, Canada 0. So for Canada to score anything would have been a huge improvement. And good news, they did. Unfortunately, New Zealand scored a few times before, in between, and afterwards, but that doesn't matter. So by the time Canada does get on the scoreboard, it's already 21-0 to New Zealand. At a point, it looked like they were scoring points per minute. They were just like loading them up. It took Canada a bit of a while to get into this game, but then we get to around about the 25 to 30 minute mark, and Canada's starting to turn it on. They're not making some of the same penalties that they made earlier in this game, and in actual fact, the Black Ferns are making penalties and making errors, and all of a sudden, Canada finds itself 10 meters from the try line, and they get a penalty, and it's Sophie de Goody who takes it as a quick tap, goes over and scores the first try for Canada of the evening, and then, just to top it off, converts her own try. Because is she de Goody or is she de Goaty? Yes, I did read your Twitter feed, Derek.
Yeah, so did everybody else. I saw that floating around a lot. It's the proudest moment of my my Twitter life right now, I think.
Yeah, and so then, obviously getting a point on the board, you want to keep the momentum going, and that is what happened, because the forwards were just having like a great match so far, and it ended up being Forteza who went over for the second try after Tyson Bokaboom broke free from the maul, and Forteza was just in the right place to get that pass to score. And I've got to say, even that maul leading up to it was just phenomenal. It was a tactic that worked fantastically well last year in the World Cup, and it did take a while for it to be a tool that could be used by Canada, but when it did, boy, was it took a while for the Black Ferns to try and like stifle that. But yeah, when it worked, it really worked. And so we go into the sheds, Canada 14, New Zealand 21. And I think a bit of a false dawn for Canada, because as soon as we get out into the second half, it is the Black Fern Duplessis who went on to actually be named player of the match, getting her first try of the game, and getting New Zealand the bonus point, which we all knew was going to happen. I mean, every single game of the Pacific Four Series has had the winning team win by 50 points or more at this point, so not a big surprise that the Black Ferns get the bonus point try. And and then it keeps pretty steady. New Zealand aren't able to get as far as they want to. Canada's holding the line, and then we have another push towards with Justine Pelletier basically like guiding action from scrum half until we get a power play by the forwards coming well, and when this time is like pushing against the try line. And to be fair, New Zealand did put in a strong defense. Anytime Canada looked to be going towards an over, Black Fern was already there to stop them until eventually the player lineup just had a Olivia de Merchant picking up the ball and noticing that there was only backs in a way, and she was like, please, and reaches over, scores Canada's third try of the game to bring it to 21-0, thanks to Sophie de Goody's third conversion of the game. And that's where the good news ends, because from that point onwards, New Zealand were like, wait a minute, we're the world champions. We need to show how good we actually are. But yeah, it's, and to be fair to both these teams, they've already qualified for the next World Cup. They have the freedom to bring new players in and test them out and see how well they can do in the 15 setup. I mean, we had Olivia Apps getting her first 15 cap in this game. And that's her first cap for Canada if you ignore the over 100 she's got in sevens. But, doesn't matter at this point. But we've also, and to be honest, the entire back line was a mismatch of players you knew, players with lots of experience, players with, first opportunities to really show at the 15s. And New Zealand really took advantage of that. Now, to be fair, they do have a lot of new players themselves, but again, having a Super Rugby series to play prior to coming over, and also having Australia to boss around. Again, they beat them by over 50 points the previous week. Gave them a bit more of a warm-up, so to speak. And, we then get tries from Holmes to Nettie. We get another from Duplessis. We get another from Paul. And so, not all of them get converted. Holmes was only able to convert 6 of the 8 tries. And and just before the final try by Tanetti, Sophie de Goody went from de Goty back to de Goody as she gets a yellow card for the final 3 minutes. And then on the restart, Canada can't control the ball. It goes forward. Full-time whistle goes for Canada 21, New Zealand 52. But as I said at the start of the podcast, there was a crowd of over 10,000 here in Ottawa. That is the largest crowd for a Canada women's game in Canada ever. So huge congratulations to Canada women's team for putting on a great game. Congratulations to everyone at Rugby Canada for promoting this and getting the word out. I even saw that they had their promotional tactics included giving tickets to young people around the Ottawa area. And even in the build-up, we had Canadian players hosting clinics for rugby clubs in the greater Ottawa area. So, fantastic outreach. I think it's the first home game in 7 years that wasn't part of the World Cup. Or, sorry, the first home game in 7 years that in Ontario, because we've had games in BC, we've had games
I feel like that's
Nova Scotia over the past couple of years. But yeah, I remember a statistic coming up saying like first game in 7 years. And I was like, wait a minute. They did have some warm-up games last year, but
yeah.
So yeah, I think the first home game in Ottawa in 7 years, in Ontario, sorry, in like 7 years.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, like we said at the top of the show, just great to see, just the amount of people that were there. Obviously, 10,000 plus. Again, it's incredible. And all the work that it looks like the women's team is doing around the Ottawa area definitely looks like it's paying off as far as growing the fan base in that region, and obviously just the outreach and making the Rugby Canada brand and the women's team a little bit more well known. The game itself too, another great display of rugby. Super fun. It's always cool to see a haka on Canadian soil. It's always fun. They don't happen too often, so that's always a bit of a treat. I think for the game itself, as you kind of mentioned, Stu, the forward pack I think matched up really well with New Zealand. I thought, in the breakdown, especially Sophie DeGoody was, had a couple breakdown steals. They were able to get some turnovers, right, and they matched up really well with them physically. They matched up well with the scrum. They matched up well with the line out, even though there's some miscues there. Canada, I think their penalty count early on really hurt them. I think it got up to like 6 or 7 before New Zealand even got one. So I think that hurt them. Like you kind of said, I think the story of this game though was just was the backs, right? And it's the Black Ferns are they're pretty good, as you mentioned. They're a pretty good team, and they're one of those teams that's like they can score from anywhere. And there was a lot of plays in this game where the Canada kicked the ball and Black Ferns would just run a counter attack off of whoever happened to catch that ball. And within seconds, it was in the Canada's walk into their goal line because New Zealand just scored a try, right? So it's the counterattack game really worked extremely well for the Black Ferns. They did they won that kicking exchange. They won that territory. The backs in general, New Zealand scored 8 tries in this game. 7 of them were from backs, which is just kind of I think a stat that kind of just shows how dominant the backs were in this one. Of that 7, 5 of them they had 5 different back try scorers as well. And Connor, the hooker, was the other try, which was 1 minute into the game. So they scored, obviously. They scored first, and then they scored often after that. But I think, looking at this game, there was, obviously, Brunt, Duplessis, Paul, Holmes, and then Demont, the fly half for them. Like, they just, they torched the Canadian backs the whole game. They were just constantly finding gaps in the defense and some solid offloads, and their speed is incredible too. They were honestly though too, like they were getting it done on both sides of the ball. They made some really nice defensive plays. Again, if you kind of look at Canada, the reverse of that, all 3 of Canada's tries were from forwards. Right. And they were good tries. Like they were obviously really well worked. Like I said, I think Canada's forwards really matched up really well. And when they were attacking with the ball, they were able to, kind of much the same as New England, what we were just talking about, right? You have the proper ruck support and you can open up defense. You play well through the phases and are composed with the ball, right? I think Renee Holmes, made one of the best tackles I have ever seen in a rugby game. And at that point, I was like, this is going to be a very long day for Canada. When Fortes had basically a 20-meter break to the try line, and Holmes somehow tackled her from behind and held her up at the same time.
That was impressive to say the least.
It's definitely, it's not the hardest tackle I've ever seen, but it's might be technically the best tackle. I have no idea how she did that. That was incredible. At least Forteza got her try later on, but I really do wonder, because that was kind of before New Zealand really started to go off and get that big lead. I really if Forteza scores there, I wonder how much that changes the game. But Holmes, that tackle was just incredible. Who knows what it looks like the game looks like if she doesn't make that tackle, if Canada gets a little bit of that momentum, but she did, and New Zealand went on to absolutely dominate this game. It's just one of those games. The score line's not that important. It's a really cool day the score line is important, but ultimately it's it is a really cool day for Canadian rugby. So it's hard to be too disappointed, but New Zealand was clearly the better team in this game.
I mean, it's going to be really interesting next week. And but before I talk about that, I will talk about the result of the earlier game, which was USA versus Australia. Again, same sentiment as before. Australia will have their Super W series, which has been going on. And, they were obviously very disappointed with their result against the Black Ferns last week. But the USA, they came and they put in a few scoring efforts, but it was just a clear mismatch between these two teams. The final score: USA 17, Australia 58. So this places Canada, I believe. I believe they're still second in the Pacific Four series because they're on 5 points and they have a smaller point differential. I'll just quickly confirm that, but more importantly, they are above fourth. And with the USA set to face the Black Ferns next week, it ain't looking good for the Americans, to say the least. Canada basically needs only one table point, and they will secure their position in the WXV, which is the new women's international competition, which will be taking place this October and November.
Which means big thing next week is just going to be to score 4 tries.
Absolutely. Ideally win.
Score 4 tries.
Score 4 tries.
Win, but score 4 tries.
Yeah, and that'll be confirmed. And although, to be honest, after the All Blacks Black Ferns USA game, it should already be decided by then anyway. So, but you just want to have a bit of home pride. Win at home in front of all these fans will certainly make a difference. And so more action coming up this Friday. So again, those games are USA versus New Zealand before concluding with Canada versus Australia. We're going to briefly touch up upon some other Rugby Canada results because, Saturday, let's just say it wasn't Canada's day. So in the opening of the Pacific Four series, we also had a curtain raiser between Canada and the USA. At half-time, it was the women's U20s, I should say, between Canada and the USA as well. At halftime, Canada was leading the USA, but in the second half, the Eagles just turned on the Jets, and the Canada barely had a response from them. The final score: Canada 24, USA 40, and earlier in the day, over in Europe, where Canada are taking part in their men's under-18 summer tour in the Netherlands, a very close encounter which ultimately went the way of the hosts as the game finished Canada 20, the Netherlands 27. Close encounters, and disappointing results, I'm sure, for all the Canadian players at least, but invaluable experience that they'll be able to take forward going into their next games and next encounters. And it feels weird that we're not making predictions for the next round of MLR, but that is it. There is no MLR coming up this weekend, but what is the aforementioned Pacific Four series and those games, as well as the Rugby Championship between the men's teams of Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and Argentina, will be available on TSN, tsn.ca, the TSN app, and TSN Plus. And remember that we will be posting our survey on our social media channels that you can take part in as you vote for your end-of-year awards for the players across the MLR season. And you can find that on our social media channels, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and now Threads. Yes, we stay up to date. And they are all at the Rouge Rugby. We also have a YouTube channel at the Rouge Rugby with episodes of the podcast, as well as extra interviews with players and coaches. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, and stay up to date with all our videos. And if you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, as well as our written pieces. You can find those on our brand new website, rougerugby.ca, and you'll find our podcast also available on Spotify, S4P, and Apple Podcasts. Derek, where can the fine people find you on social media?
At Brissette the Jet, I think anywhere on every social media platform, but I honestly have no idea how many of them there are anymore. What's new? I do have Threads, but I know there's like 9 more that have popped up in the last like 2 weeks. Are we still using Twitter? What's going like? Is Twitter? Are we going down with the ship on Twitter, or are we?
Yeah, I think so.
Basically, it's gone. Basically,
we're waiting until Elon Musk gets knocked out in his cage fight with Mark Zuckerberg, and then after that, I think we'll be leaving. And you can find me across social media on whichever platform you choose. And if I'm not there, let me know. But if you search for Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN, you should find a picture of me, and we can go from there. Well, that's where we're going to end this episode. Derek, thank you for joining me, and thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we focus on real Canadian rugby. We hope you can join us again next time.